Good afternoon, everyone. We will now call this meeting of Health and Human Services Subcommittee to order. Today, we have two readouts. We have one from State Archives, and we have our second from the Department of Human Services, Family Investment. And at this time, we'll bring Ms. Elizabeth Weibel to the table to read out in reference to State Archives.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll start with the fiscal 2026 allowance for the State Archives. The allowance is $11 million, which is an increase of $3.4 million from fiscal 2025. That's due mainly to an expected $3 million general fund reversion in fiscal 25. As you'll see on page 1 of the analysis, the fiscal 26 allowance is almost entirely made up of special funds. And this is because the agency is implementing a new fee structure for its land records website, which I'll talk about in a moment. You'll see an overview of spending in Exhibit 1 on page 2. The pie chart shows 74% of the allowance goes to regular personnel expenses, and another 11% supports the rental and costs for off-site warehouse space to house some of the agency's collections. The proposed budget change is shown in Exhibit 2 on page 3. And the largest change, as I mentioned, is due to an expected $3 million reversion in fiscal 25. Personnel costs make up most of the rest of the change. The fiscal 2026 allowance includes 2 contractual conversions to regular positions and a total reduction of 3 contractual FTE positions. The agency has the equivalent of 4 vacant regular positions, including 2 half-time positions that the agency is in the process of combining into 1 full-time position, which will hopefully be easier to hire for. And DLS has asked the agency to provide an update on its efforts to fill those vacancies. Key observations begin on page 5. I'll start with the new fee schedule I mentioned. The State Archives maintains an online database of property documents such as deeds and mortgages from all around the state. And the site currently offers free downloads for individuals and a subscription option for companies that need to download large numbers of records in bulk. However, in recent years, some companies have started using bots to create multiple individual accounts to download records, which circumvents the subscription fees while putting a strain on the site's servers. This is also in violation of the site's user agreement and increases operational costs without generating any revenue for the agency. So by the end of fiscal 2025, the State Archives is planning to implement a 20-cent per page fee schedule for downloading records. This is similar to the PACER system that the federal courts use and similar to systems used in some of the surrounding jurisdictions. And the agency projects that even after accounting for a potential decrease in downloads once the paywall goes up, the new fee schedule could bring in $1 million in revenue per month, hence the transition you saw on the first page to a budget that is almost entirely funded by special funds in fiscal 26. The new fee schedule is also expected to bring in enough revenue in fiscal 2025 for the agency to make that planned reversion of $3 million. And DLS has asked the agency to provide an update on plans for the new fee schedule and when it is expected to be implemented. Key observation 2 at the end of page 5 shows there was an increase in the number of public programs and in the amount of materials provided to patrons in fiscal 2024 compared to the prior year. Exhibit 3 on page 6 shows the archives offered 154 public programs in fiscal 2024, and many of these are saved on YouTube for people to view later. As of fiscal 2024, the agency holds more than 416,000 cubic feet of materials in its physical collection and more than 190,000 gigabytes of electronic records. Exhibit 4 on page 7 shows the amount of materials provided to patrons online, in person, by mail, or by phone. DLS recommendation is to concur with the governor's allowance, and the text of that is on page 8. That concludes my presentation. I can take any questions you have.
Yes, ma'am, and seeing no questions, at this time, we'll ask for Madam Archivist Bachman and her team to come to the stand.
Good afternoon, Chair McCray and members. I'm Elaine Rice Bachman, State Archivist. With me today are Assistant State Archivist Corey Lewis and Emily Olin-Squires, along with Director of Administration Teresa Foley. We extend our thanks to Elizabeth Weibel, our analyst, who is new to our agency this year and who took the time to meet with us and view our operations in person. As we like to say, although the Archives is a small agency, we have a very wide portfolio of responsibilities across state government. Ms. Weibel listened to our concerns and thoughtfully responded to them in her analysis. And that analysis reflects the considerable budget challenge we faced in FY24 when an unanticipated drop in special funds occurring in the middle of the fiscal year caused us to plunge into a fiscal crisis. And here I want to acknowledge and thank the Deputy Director of Administration, our accountant, John Talon. Through his and Teresa's careful guidance, our staff navigated a period of near zero extra expenditure, employing a must-have-only policy with managers for any supplies or services, and deferring any maintenance on equipment or software that was not absolutely essential to our operations internally, and without sacrificing any of our public services. This belt-tightening enabled us to get through the fiscal year without exceeding our appropriation, and challenged us to reevaluate our existing fee schedule for land records and create a sustainable revenue source for the future. Knowing that general funds would not be available to restore our budget in FY26, the archives endeavored to find a way to restore the loss of special funds by analyzing closely the public users of mdlandrec.net, the online access to recent and historical land record filings and indices from Maryland circuit courts, which we maintain. In doing so, we identified that the top 50 users of the site are for-profit businesses with multiple, in some cases hundreds, of individual users under each business creating individual accounts. We calculated potential revenue derived from moving from the current fee schedule based on bulk user subscriptions to individual user fees. In considering this move to a paywall for certain users, we also analyzed our neighboring states to see if land records were being monetized. What we found is that the counties in each neighboring state charge on average $1 per page, and that Maryland is the only state that provides a single location for land records, as well as the only state that did not charge users for downloads or copies. With approval from the Office of the Governor, the Department of Budget and Management, as well as the Department of Information Services, we are currently engaged in the process of developing a paywall of 20 cents per page for mdlandrec.net to be implemented in the fourth quarter of FY25. The revenue we anticipate receiving will restore and exceed the previous amount of special funds, allowing us to reduce our reliance on general funds. Historical land records, those over 100 years old, will remain free to the public, and access in the courts, as well as free access in the Maryland State Archives search room, will remain the same. We have more thoroughly described these plans and responded to the other questions posed in Ms. Wabel's analysis in my written testimony. I and my colleagues here are prepared to answer any questions you may have today. In closing, I will echo the Council of State Archivists in stating that effectively functioning government archives are the foundation of open and transparent government operations that meet constituents' needs. The Maryland State Archives' mission to preserve and make accessible the permanent records of state government and Maryland history provides essential service to the public. On behalf of our entire agency, I want to thank the Maryland Legislature and the Office of the Governor for supporting that mission and facilitating our existence as an independent agency under the Executive Department. Thank you.
Just to,
Yes, sir. Senator Jennings.
from the analysis, she said, and I'm just kind of shocked there's that much that gets searched. So you're expecting to make $1 million a month off of this?
Potentially.
Potentially.
Based
Okay.
on research into how bulk users or users with multiple accounts are accessing the site on a daily basis.
Okay, I'm just, because I've been sitting here kind of Googling it. Once she said it, now that you've said it, looking at, so you handle this for the courts, so when, so this is new to me. I did not realize that this is on you, on your agency. So I guess when any land transfer, they have to search, and it comes through your agency to search that.
The instruments come to us, yes, after they're recorded.
Okay. Did you want to say something, sir?
Yes, just the history of the platform. We designed this in conjunction with the courts in 1999.
Okay.
So this has been in existence since then. Through a process of overnight transfers, we receive data and then imagery, which we then sync and make accessible for the public.
Okay. No, it's interesting, and it'd be nice to see a system where it's an agency that's self-funding itself. So,
Is our hope.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no further questions, Archivist Bachman, I sing your praises all the time. Senator Jennings, like you, I just didn't understand the depth in reference to what you all do and the partners that you all have, partner agencies or partner public-private partnerships that currently exist. And I just say thank you. I was looking at my notes from last year and I looked at some of the words that I wrote and it said intentional. So I thank you for being intentional in reference to making sure that the history is protected for all communities, not just some communities, and just continue to lead. It's one of the shining stars for the state of Maryland. And Ms. Wabo, just thank you for your in-depth presentation. And colleagues, seeing that there is no questions, we've given all these accolades. How about we bring up the next agency?
Thank you very much.
At that time, I'd like to call up Ms. Tanya Zimmerman to give the readout for Department of Human Services Family Investment.
Fiscal 2026 allowance for the Family Investment Administration decreases by $49.6 million or 1.8%. However, if you exclude the $72 million of deficiencies that are related to the fiscal 24 expenditures, it would increase by $22.7 million. The discussion of the agency's performance begins on page 7, but if you turn to page 8, Exhibit 1, this is an exhibit that shows the applications by benefit type for SNAP, TCA, and TDAP. As you can see, the number of applications has increased through the most of the course of calendar 2024, and in fact exceed pre-pandemic levels. So for SNAP, this is about 33% higher, and for TCA and TDAP, it's also about 20% and about 37% higher. In fact, the TCA and TDAP have had some of their highest months since the restart of recertifications in the second half of calendar 2024. Exhibit 2 on page 9 shows the average days to process applications each quarter by benefit type. In general, applications are to be processed within 30 days, though the SNAP has expedited benefits which require processing within 7 days, and as a result, the average days to process SNAP applications is considerably lower than TCA and TDAP. All of the benefits have experienced decreases in the average days to process applications recently. However, the TDAP application average days to process applications remains higher than the periods prior to the restart of recertifications. And we've asked the department to comment on the cause of the recent increases in applications and efforts to reduce application processing times for TDAP. Exhibit 3 on page 11 looks at the application denial rates by benefit type. The application denial rates for SNAP are considerably lower than TCA and TDAP and are generally below 30%, where TCA and TDAP are generally above 70%. In fact, for TDAP, it's been above 80%, at or near 80% since September 2023. TDAP has additional requirements related to disability status and cooperation with the SSI that make it more difficult to receive approval. And we've asked the department to, I guess I should start with looking at the exhibit number 4 on page 12, which looks at a couple of the particular reasons for denial related to TDAP. So 2 of them that are kind of more unique in terms of the impact on TDAP are the SSI-related reasons. And so with that, it's been usually about 6%. It was a little higher at the beginning of calendar 2024. It's come down a little bit since then. Verification is a common cause for application denial for TCA as well, but there are additional verifications required for TDAP. And so it's particularly notable for that population. It's generally in recent in 2024 generally been kind of at or above the kind of 30% range. And so we've asked the department to discuss the efforts to reduce denials due to verifications and SSI-related factors. Exhibit 5 shows the, on page 13, shows the application denials that are due to non-cooperation with child support. For the period between October 2021 and September 2023, non-cooperation with child support represented kind of fewer than 5% of application denials. It's increased significantly since then, increasing to 21%. By August 2024 and been near 20% since then. Although the department, under legislation enacted in 2020, no longer closes cases related to child support cooperation and instead reduces benefits, they are still able to close cases for deny applications due to non-cooperation. And we've asked the department to discuss factors contributing to the growth in application denials due to the failure to cooperate with child support and their efforts to increase cooperation. Skipping ahead to page 16, this kind of continues a discussion related to the case closures. Exhibit 8 on page 17 looks particularly at the share of case closures due to the failure to reapply. This is the predominant cause of case closures for SNAP cases. Although this can indicate barriers to the reapplication process, it also can be attributed in cases to individuals who recognize that they're no longer eligible and so do not reapply. In general, it's been over 70% of the case closures. However, that has declined substantially in the most recent 2 quarters, which is impacted by an increase in closures related to the able-bodied adults without dependents time limit, which we'll discuss a little bit more later. Exhibit 10 on page 19 looks at the case closures related to the TDAP. Between December 2021 and October 2023, the department was unable to report separately the number of case closures due to disability status due to the transition in the eligibility systems. However, since then, they've been able to report the numbers, and the share of the closures due to this reason has increased and was over 45% in the most recent quarter. The SSI kind of cooperation-related reasons spiked in the quarter from July through September 2022 to more than 50%, but has generally been below 30% since then. And we've asked the department to discuss the recent increase in closures related to disability status. Turning ahead to page 23, this continues a discussion related to the fiscal 2024 closeout process. The beginning of that discussion was about the reversions and error that you heard about in the DHS overview. This particular item at the top of the page 23 looks at a reversion of $100,000 at the fiscal 2024 closeout that was related to funds that were restricted pending the resolution of repeat audit findings for which the criteria was not met. In May 2024, the Office of Legislative Audit submitted a report on the status of the repeat findings that indicated the department had only resolved 1 of the 5. And as the language requires the resolution of all, the funds were not authorized to be released. Consistent with the request of the Joint Audit and Evaluation Committee, DLS recommends adding language restricting funds, again, pending the resolution of the repeat audit findings. Turning to page 24, this begins the discussion of the proposed deficiency appropriations. There are 12 proposed deficiency appropriations for family investment totaling about $113 million. About 72 of those are related to costs, fiscal 2024 costs. If you exclude those, the deficiency appropriations total about $40.5 million. About 20 million of those are related to aligning the funding in the assistance payments program with its anticipated expenditures. The largest of those relate to TDAP and TCA due to higher than expected caseloads, as well as lower than expected special funds. Of the remaining proposed deficiency appropriations, about 18 million are federal funds for the Maryland Office for Refugees and Asylees to support refugee support services and the Refugee Cash Assistance Program due to continued increases in the number of refugee and humanitarian immigrant populations resettled in the state. Page 25 begins the discussion of cash assistance benefit levels. Under state law, The governor is required to provide sufficient funding to ensure that the TCA benefit, when combined with the SNAP benefit, equals 61.25% of the Maryland minimum living level. Under the Maryland minimum living level, TCA benefits each year are impacted not only by inflation, but the level of benefits set for SNAP each year by USDA. Chapter 408 of 2018 tied the TDAP benefit level to the maximum TCA benefit level for a one-person household. Although the chapter provided a phased-in schedule for the increase, in practice, the state has provided the full one-person household level of benefits to TDAP recipients since January 2022. The Maryland minimum living level calculation has been updated annually based on inflation for each federal fiscal year since federal fiscal 1980, except for federal fiscal 1981. The update is based on inflation in May. Historically, the calculation has been made in advance of the start of the federal fiscal year in October, which coincides with the change in the SNAP benefits as determined by USDA. In a break with historical practice, DHS did not calculate the update for federal fiscal 2025 until November 2024. While benefits typically increase annually due to inflation, in some years the SNAP benefits increases exceed inflation, and therefore the TCA benefits may not be required to increase. In other years, the increase may be higher than inflation if the SNAP benefit does not fully cover inflation. Exhibit 13 on page 26 presents a recent history of these benefit levels. And as you can see, since federal fiscal 2020, the benefits had not increased until this current fiscal year due to a combination of factors. On August 2nd, USDA released the maximum monthly allotment for SNAP benefits. And for a household of 3, which is what the calculation is based on, it increased by only $2 per month, compared to an inflation of about 3.3%. As a result, DHS calculated the maximum benefit required to meet the 61.25% of the Maryland minimum living level would be $753, an increase of $26 per month in the maximum benefit. Although the department calculated that an increase is needed to meet that level, DHS reported in November 2024 that it would not be providing the benefit increase until January 1, 2025, and would not be providing retroactive benefits. DLS estimates this reduced the overall benefit payments by about $1.46 million. The monthly benefit data provided by the department to DLS confirmed the initial data confirmed that the increase had occurred for TCA recipients, but did not appear to have occurred for the TDAP recipients. An additional month of data now does show a benefit increase for the TDAP recipients, though it's unclear why the timing was different. And we've asked the department to discuss the cause of the delay in completing the calculation and why, in a break from historical practice, it did not provide the benefit increase in October nor make it retroactive. The fiscal 2026 allowance of FIA totals $2.6 billion. Approximately 84% of that is related to assistance payments. If you turn to Exhibit 15 on page 29, this chart looks at the spending in the family investment aside from the assistance payments program, which totals about $430 million. About $200 million of this is related to personnel. About $194.5 million, or 45%, is related to various contracts and grants. The label Other Contracts and Grants totals $46.5 million and includes about $22 million for the call center, which you heard about as part of the DHS administration analysis. The funds remain in the family investment budget, although the department has indicated they plan to realign those, and we've asked the department to discuss when the realignment will occur. Exhibit 16 on page 30 and 31 look at the various changes within the agency's budget. There are some modest changes related to the benefit programs related to anticipated benefits, and changes in eligibility that occurred due to legislation from last year. Of the other changes, one of the largest is related to rent. That relates to primarily an anticipated increase for rent at lease renewal in Baltimore City, as well as mechanical system upgrades for one location in Baltimore City. Page 35 reviews the adequacy of the general funds for benefit payments in Exhibit 18. Overall, DLS is projecting modest surpluses in fiscal 2025 and 2026. These are driven in both years by the other public assistance line, which is really public assistance to adults is the main driver of that. The caseload in this program has decreased dramatically since fiscal 2019, about 40% through December, and the budget has remained higher than is needed to cover all the benefit payments. And DLS recommends reducing $1.75 million of the fiscal 2026 surplus. The SNAP, the allowance for the SNAP, it totals $1.86 billion. That would support about 452,000 cases, but while the average number of cases in fiscal 2025 has been about 382,000. And DLS recommends reducing the federal funds for SNAP by $200 million to better align with anticipated spending. This still leaves about $150 million in the event of unexpected caseload growth. The discussion of the issues begins on page 37. The first is related to a voluntary settlement agreement that was announced on October 10th, 2024 with the Office for Civil Rights with the Department of Health and Human Services. The department reports that the agreement covers all DHHS funded programs, including those such as Medicaid, child support, and energy assistance beyond those covered through the Assistance Payments Program. The agreement related to 12 complaints that covered the period from 2011 to 2022. According to the announcement, the investigation by the Office for Civil Rights found systemic concerns related to the LDSS's lacking a consistent approach for assessing disabilities and related modifications or accommodations, and a need for statewide policies and procedures related to providing reasonable modifications and accommodations. Chapter 506 of 2022 required DHS to hire a consultant to conduct a review of the Family Investment Program. That was released in October and had several findings that were kind of related to the agreement. In general, what some of these findings are was that the department did not have one standard assessment that was used. In addition, it noted challenges in referrals for services for individuals with disability, including reasons related to wait lists at in the DOORS program, as well as inequities in the granting of good cause. Page 39 begins the discussion of the requirements of the agreement. The settlement agreement requires a number of different actions that are based on set times from the effective date of the agreement. DHS reports that the agreement was effective August 13th, 2024. DHS was required within 90 days of the effective date of the agreement to provide a general notice of the terms and agreement and availability of free assessments and evaluation of the need for reasonable modifications for current and potential recipients. The department was required to post the information on their website and social media in the state and local offices, and mailed to those whose TCA cases were closed since July 1, 2021 under certain circumstances, particularly related to the closure for non-cooperation and related to work sanctions. Although it was required to be posted within 90 days of the effective date of the agreement, the department did not post the notice on their website until February 3rd. Although the DLS did not know the number of notifications that were required to be sent to the cases whose closed, based on the number of cases that whose cases were closed due to non-cooperation between July 2021 and October 2024, there were about 14,800 that closed during that period. There were few cases closed due to work sanctions due to change in state law around this. However, there are still reduced benefits for work sanctions, and DLS is unable to estimate the number of cases that might be impacted by reduced benefits. The department reports that it will send the required notices by April 18th. We've asked the department to comment on why the agency was delayed in posting the notices required and delays in sending the notices to TCA's recipients whose cases had closed, and whether it has posted the notices at the local offices as required. The Secretary is required to identify one universal assessment tool to be used by all local departments. The department indicates that they're currently evaluating assessment models and anticipates a new assessment tool will be implemented in December 2025. There are several costs associated with the implementation of the agreement. As part of the agreement, they were required to make modifications to the eligibility system within 180 days. Most of these are related to accommodations and alerts and notifications to make for individuals with disabilities. And we've asked the department to discuss the timeline for determining the costs of those changes and how they will be covered within the fiscal 2025 and 2026 budgets. Two additional portions of the agreement could create a potential cost liability, including a review of the cases that were the basis of the agreement and cases that are required to be notified of the agreement, and the availability of assessments and evaluations and the right to appeal. With the appeals, the department could be required to reopen cases or pay retroactive benefits for underpayments. DHS said in prior responses that it could not estimate the potential costs of those underpayments, and we've asked the department to discuss the number of individuals expected to provide notification, the timeline for the appeals, and any issuances of related benefits. And DLS also recommends restricting funds pending a report on the number of notifications sent, number of appeals filed and lost, and the dollar value of benefits required due to those lost appeals, as well as other status updates on the agreement. Page 42 begins the discussion of the second issue related to case closures due to the time limit in the TCA program. Federal law prohibits cases headed by an adult from receiving TANF-funded cash assistance benefits for more than 5 cumulative years. However, federal law provides for the option for exemptions due to hardship. Under the provision, 20% of caseloads receiving TANF-funded cash assistance from the prior year can continue to receive benefits beyond 5 years. DHS has historically granted a hardship exemption to all cases reaching the time limit, as the percentage was well below the 20% time limit. Therefore, few, if any, cases were closed due to the time limit. As part of the audit that was released by the Office of Legislative Audits in October 2022, one of the findings was that the Family Investment Administration was allowing recipients to continue to receive benefits for longer than the 5 years without a documented hardship. As a result, to resolve the finding, the department altered their policy and began closing cases. These case closures did not really begin until fiscal 2024. However, since that time, there's been a significant increase in the number of case closures due to this reason. Exhibit 19 on page 44 shows the data on the increased case closures related to hitting the time limit. These really began to increase in November 2023 and then spiked to around 2,100 in December 2023. Although it's come down since then, it still remains significantly higher than occurred previously, and over the 2 years has totaled 6,661 through October 2024, the last period of additional data available. In addition to case closures, applications have been denied due to this reason. Up until November 2023, this was not a top reason for denial, and so was not separately reported. Since that time, it's been one of the top reasons for denial in each month, except for October 2024, and has been about 100 per month. Issue 3 begins on page 45 and covers the summer food benefits for children. The Federal Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2023 authorized a new optional nationwide permanent summer EBT program, now known as Sunbucks, which began in summer 2024. The department submitted the required notice and plans to participate in summer 2024 and has done so once again for summer 2025. Exhibit 20 on page 47 presents information on the number of recipients and benefits provided by jurisdiction in summer 2024. Page 48 begins the discussion of the administrative costs. The fiscal 2025 budget as enacted included $11.6 million for administrative expenses of the program. It was included in the budget of the Assistance Payments Program, which is used only for benefit payments. And as a result, language in the fiscal 2025 budget bill required the funds to be transferred to the Director's Office in Family Investment. However, that transfer has not yet been initiated, and we've asked the department to discuss the timeline for transferring the appropriation. The administrative expenses primarily support 100 positions, which the department reports are contractual full-time equivalents. That includes both the kind of salary-related and fringe benefit-related costs, as well as costs for equipment. The next highest cost is the cost for the EBT issuances. Although the department indicates that the 100 positions are contractual full-time equivalents, the data submitted with budget does not reflect that level of full-time equivalents. And we've asked the department to discuss why the position counts do not reflect them and why the department is using contractual FTEs for ongoing activities given the available vacant positions. The fiscal 2026 allowance again includes $11.6 million in the Assistance Payments Program for administrative expenses, which the department notes as a technical error, which it anticipates resolving through a budget amendment or a supplemental budget. As of January 29th, 2025, DHS reported that only 80 of the 100 contractual full-time equivalents were filled. In addition, DLS notes the department has a number of vacant positions over the required level to meet their budgeted turnover. And so DLS recommends reducing the administrative funds by $2.2 million. Based on the current staffing level of the Sunbucks program, as well as the availability of funding through vacancy savings across Family Investment to support the administrative expenses. DLS also recommends deleting the remaining $9.4 million from the Assistance Payments Program and adding these funds to the Director's Office for this purpose, and recommends adopting committee narrative requesting a report on the summer 2025 participation and issuances. Issue 4, which is the final issue in the analysis, talks about the able-bodied adults without dependents, or ABOD time limit. This requirement limits SNAP receipts for those determined to be ABODs to 3 months in a 36-month period unless working or participating in an employment and training program for an average of 20 or more hours per week. The Fiscal Responsibility Act of 2023 increased the upper age limit through October 1, 2030 that the limit applies to, and will cover up to, now covers up to age 54. During the period of the national public health emergency, the ABOD requirements were suspended. As a result, they were suspended through June 30, 2023. Since the end of the suspension, there have been waivers in place for jurisdictions in both fiscal 2024 and 2025. The waivers have not been for necessarily the same jurisdictions between periods, though there has been some of them are the same. In addition to exceptions for individuals meeting certain criteria, the state also receives discretionary exemptions, which can be used to relieve the requirement for 1 month for each exemption. Initially, DHS was able to use accumulated discretionary exemptions to prevent case closures due to the time limit. However, beginning in June 2024, the department began using those exemptions only for those newly subject to the requirement due to the change in the age requirements. As a result, beginning in May 2024, DHS began to close cases due to individuals reaching the time limit. And between May and October 2024, the most recent data available, a total of 18,494 SNAP cases were closed due to meeting the requirement, with about 45% of those occurring in May 2024. The case closures have occurred were reported in all jurisdictions, including those for which waivers were in place. So for example, DHS reported nearly 1,100 case closures due to the time limit in Baltimore City, which USDA reports as having a waiver in effect. And we've asked the department to discuss the reason for closures occurring in jurisdictions with waivers in place, and also outreach and other efforts undertaken to work with recipients prior to closure to reduce the number of closures. Page 52 begins the recommended actions. I'm only going to cover those that I didn't already mention in my presentation. Recommendation 1 relates to a restriction of funds pending submission of closeout documents. This was part of the issue discussed in the overview analysis related to the closeout issues in fiscal 2024 and is needed to help support forecasting. Page 53, recommendation number 2 restricts the funds in the assistance payments program to be used for that purpose. This is consistent with other entitlement programs. This is also consistent with actions taken in prior years, except for that it applies it to all funds rather than just general funds due to some of the errors that occurred at closeout in fiscal 2024. Recommendation 9 on page 56 requests information on application processing times, denial rates, and case closures. This has typically been committee narrative. This adds language restricting funds instead and adds the public assistance to adults to the information that's being reported. And on page 58, recommendation 11 adds language restricting the funds for the TDAP program to that purpose only, consistent with the other kind of general fund restrictions in place in the assistance payments program in fiscal 2025. The other recommendations were already discussed in the analysis, and that concludes my presentation.
Senator Hedelman.
Thank you very much. And this might be an unfair question, but the Republican budget that's right before the House right now contemplates a number of cuts, including $230 billion to SNAP. Have we translated what that might mean for us here in Maryland?
We have not yet determined what the impacts of the various proposals would be.
Is that something that's on your guys' to-do list?
Yeah, I can look into it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, if we can bring up Deputy Secretary and her team. Madam Deputy Secretary, we do have your written response, so if you can give us high level. We have a delegation meeting that starts at 3, and I want to make sure that if folks do have questions that they're able to get them in.
Good afternoon, Chair McCray and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Carnitra White, and I serve as the Principal Deputy Secretary for the Department of Human Services. We'd like to thank Governor Moore, Lieutenant Governor Miller, the Department of Budget and Management, and the budget committees for your support. We also would like to thank Tanya Zinnerman for her budget analysis. Joining me at the table today is our Executive Director for the Family Investment Administration, Augustin Nabaganamana, as well as our Acting Chief Financial Officer, Jessica Smith. We also have members of our leadership team here present, including our Director for Baltimore County Department of Social Services, Mr. Mark Millspar. So I'm just going to highlight a few items, and then we'll go right into the issues raised in the analysis. First, this past summer, we launched our Sunbucks program, and it was an initiative aimed at supporting children who lacked access for free school meals during the summer. Sunbucks is now Maryland's largest investment in the fight against childhood hunger and would not have been possible without your support. With the investment of $5.8 million in administrative funding, we were able to leverage a direct federal administrative match of 1-to-1. And over $71 million in direct summer nutrition benefits to more than 594,000 students. This is a 6-fold increase in the number of children receiving SNAP benefits. Our team is proud of the work that it took to stand up this successful program. In 52 days, using the $5.8 million, we hired 80 staff, made the necessary software and system changes, and issued EBT cards so that on June 30th, food was on the table for Marylanders. We were successful because we did the work automatically to enroll eligible families and not requiring them to demonstrate eligibility over and over again. The process was seamless, simple, and swift. We did this in partnership with the State Department of Education as well as the Department of Health. And we look forward to your continued support as we continue to put food on table when school is out. In addition to our work for Maryland's children, we also increased our senior support by implementing 2024 Senate Bill 35, which increased the SNAP benefits for older adults. In particular, we'd like to thank you, Chair McCray, as well as Chair Shetty, for your leadership. If a SNAP household has an individual 60 years or older and receives less than $50 in a federal benefit, now we will ensure that that their benefit reaches the state minimum of $50. We've already served 30,000 households, making a meaningful difference in the lives of persons over 60 years old who rely on SNAP here in Maryland. Critical to our work is also ensuring that we restore stolen benefits. In March 2023, since March 2023, we've replaced $35.2 million in stolen benefits to nearly 61,000 households. As of December 20th, 2024, the federal government no longer is replacing SNAP benefits. Stolen SNAP benefits make up about 79% of all benefits stolen from Marylanders, and we're using our FY25 appropriation to continue to replace stolen benefits. We continue to work with our partners to have preventive measures. In fall of 2023, we introduced the lock-unlock feature on our EBT cards, and this has resulted in a decrease of 20% of stolen benefits compared to the past 10 months compared to the first year. We're continuing to look for innovative solutions, and in our testimony, we talk about how we're expanding outreach in our community, setting up VITA sites in both Baltimore County as well as Prince George's County to help citizens apply for taxes, to get earned income tax credit and child tax credit as we continue our fight to end childhood hunger here in the state of Maryland. And finally, I would like to express my gratitude for your continued support of the work and give a special thanks to our employees across the state of Maryland. Their commitment ensures that every Marylander has the resources to address immediate challenges and achieve long-term success. Now, Senator, would you like for us to go through our responses to the analysis, or would you like for us just to take questions?
Only the ones that you want to hit. Like I said, I want to be expeditious with time. So if there's points that you do want to hit in reference to the questions, but we do have your written response.
All right. I think the main ones that we really want to hit, and I'm just going to go to, I'll start with response number 5, adding language to restricting funds pending the resolution of the repeat audit findings. We will provide the quarterly report and update. We don't concur with the restriction of funds as we have made significant progress towards resolving those repeat audit findings. And we have submitted an October and December report to the legislative auditors, and they have advised us that we satisfactorily implemented recommendations, 2 of the 5 recommendations, and we also believe that the remaining findings are effectively resolved. I will also, in response to number 13, the Sunbucks positions, the positions were initially unbudgeted without state merit pins. As a result, we've created contractual pins in order to issue benefits by June 30th. We've created 100 contractual pins for our Sunbucks, and as reported, 80% of those positions were filled. we've taken deliberate steps to reduce our vacancy rate in FIA, and so we don't concur with the reduction of the administrative funds or the reduction of the positions in the Sunbucks. As we've indicated in our testimony, we believe that in our testimony last year, we believe that we have been systematically under-resourced for a number of years, and so that the scope of responsibility has not kept up with the available resource. So as a result, all the positions that we have in FIA are valuable, and funding those contractual positions and allocate it to the tasks that we need. And then to response 14, we concur with the report request, but request the due date to be December 1st, and we don't concur with the administrative reduction in the funding. As I mentioned before, regarding Sunbucks and our implementation and the impact that it would have in us being implemented, and the fact that it's a one-to-one federal match for administrative dollars as well. And then for the responses, I think the other ones are, you have our written responses and you could go.
Yes, ma'am. Senator Jennings.
Quick question, follow up. When you said earlier, the Sunbucks, I think that was what you said, you automatically enrolled people if they qualified. Just to confirm, do you have an automatic review annually if they are maintaining their qualification to stay in the program?
So yes, every year it will automatically enroll. So there are certain qualifications based on the federal program. So they are, whether or not they have farms, they are already farms, whether or not they receive medical assistance, whether or not they're foster care. So we data matched against the schools, and we will do that annually.
So as long as they qualify, they'll stay in. If they don't, then they'll be removed from the system.
They won't get the benefit
Okay.
for the next year. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Senator Adelman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. And I think maybe some of the public witnesses will get to this, and this has been an issue that I've raised in years past, but kind of how you spend TANF and the flexibility that you have in choosing to spend it on some non-core services rather than providing the direct assistance. I just wondered if you could comment on that. I mean, we've had some discussions with the department over the years about that, and it looks like that has continued, and just wondering why those decisions are being made the way they are.
Can take that question. Good afternoon, everyone. I would note that, yes, I think there are, we have heard concerns around TANF being spent on non-core activities. What I would note here is that over 70% of the TANF block grant is spent on both cash assistance payments as well as workforce development activities. So that's more generous than in other states. That is not to discount the fact that the benefit that we issue under the program could be increased if there was funding available. The block grant has been stagnant since 1996. Our funding does not change, and so if we're to increase the benefit to the levels that other people suggest, I think we'll quickly run out of that money, and that remain a concern. I would advise, I think we continue to work with you to, I think, advocate for the funding changes in the funding structure at the federal level in order for make sure that the program keeps up with inflation in general.
Thank you. One question I'll take offline, so I'll ask that one. In reference to a status update with the funds for movable fees, if you can send the status update, that would be helpful. The second one, I'm under the presumption that Sunbucks is a permanent program. I know that you talked about the contractual employees in your response. I assume that maybe it will phase into or transition into permanent employees, but I didn't hear that, Ruth. So if you could just...
Sure. We're going to continue to work with Department of Budget and Management in order to move those to merit pins. As you're correct, it's a federally funded continuous program. And so we're hoping to move those to merit positions. And we'll continue to work with DBM to do so.
Okay. All right, colleagues, seeing no more questions for the agency, we do have a couple of public testimony, and we're going to call them up. It looked like it's 3, so we'll call them up to the table. I'm going to ask for Shanae Parker, Lisa Klingenmeyer, and Callie Sheamus or Kevin Slayton. I'm not sure who's filling in.
Did you have Michelle Madeo, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Michelle Madeo. Anyone can start.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lisa Klingenmeyer. I'm the Deputy Director of Policy at Maryland Family Network. We're here today in strong support of the Family Investment Administration and the budget that it oversees, and in particular the cash benefit programs for low-income Marylanders. We do want to thank the administration for funding these programs during this particularly challenging time of our budget when some things have been cut, that these maintain their funding in the budget. But we do want to express a concern that DLS highlighted it in their the front page of their concerns, that this year when the department was calculating the Maryland minimum living level, it was delayed. Usually that calculation is done in October. It wasn't done this year until January. And so for those 3 months, our low-income families who are on cash assistance and our low-income individuals on temporary disability assistance were not given an increased bump as they should have been, nor does it seem like they've been given those dollars on the back end either retroactively, and that is something we find extremely concerning. These are, again, low-income children and their caretakers. The program statutorily is only required to meet, at the moment, 61.25% of the Maryland minimum living level. So by definition, these are families and individuals who are living below the poverty line. They're living in deep poverty. And so we think it's extremely important that we expeditiously honor that, so that whenever the program should be increased, that the increases are happening and they're happening on time. And if for any reason they're delayed, that those benefits are being retroactively applied. We also, again, strongly urge both the administration and the General Assembly to consider ways to start bringing up those benefits to something closer to the Maryland minimum living level. As Senator Hedelman pointed out, a lot of the TANF block grant is not spent on the cash assistance portion for TANF. And so that's one way that we would encourage to start thinking about, can we start bringing folks, our lowest income families, our lowest income individuals, up to something that's closer to what it is minimally required to have in this state in order to make ends meet. And with that, thank you so much for your time and the work of this committee, and we thank the department for their work.
Good afternoon. I'm Shanae Parker, and I have proudly served the state of Maryland for 25 years as of September. I am currently employed as a case manager at Baltimore City Department of Social Services, Northeast Division. And I'm a shop steward for ASME Maryland, Local 112. Today I am testifying on behalf of my colleagues in Family Investment Services across the state of Maryland. FIA offices in Maryland administer vital public service programs that are essential for the well-being of many residents. We are committed to assisting those in economic need and protecting vulnerable populations. However, we face challenges that hinder our ability to meet these goals, including staff shortages, safety concerns, system malfunctions, and lack of access to critical tools like Beacon system, which more than half of FIA staff cannot access. As a result, staff are overwhelmed with heavy caseloads or special assignments due to audits. This leads to burnout and exhaustion, affecting both staff and the vulnerable individuals who rely on these services. To address these issues, we need better wages to reduce staff shortages, improve retention, and minimize the caseloads, as many state employees rely on these services just to make ends meet. Many of the staff in my office receive SNAP benefits or some type of public services. In conclusion, when these issues persist, the most vulnerable people suffer. We must work together to ensure these programs are properly staffed and equipped to meet the needs of Maryland residents. On the behalf of my colleagues, my family, and most importantly, the customer we serve, I urge support for positive change in DHS. Please fully fund vital state services. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Michelle Madeo. I'm Director of Economic Justice with the Homeless Persons Representation Project. I wanted to highlight two concerns that I noted in the analysis and the response. The first is we are long overdue in Maryland of redirecting TANF back to the families who really need the benefit. As the department noted, the amount that families receive has not increased in 6 years. They just increased it a little bit in January, but prior to that, it hadn't increased since 2019. And it was very disappointing to see in the analysis that the department had over $60 million in unspent TANF reserves that it has now spent down to about $5 million projected at the end of fiscal year 26. And so this, we've had great bills over the years, like Senator Hedelman's bills that would have created a housing allowance for families who can't get into subsidized housing. There's also a bill to eliminate a $60 penalty that the department still continues to apply to families who do reside in subsidized housing. Those bills has not made it out of committee due to the cost it would come from the general funds. But TANF, the federal TANF block grant, could have been used, and the department has this unspent TANF. So it's really disappointing to see they spent it down. And on non-core expenses like child welfare, and foster care payments. So I did see the DLS recommendation to restrict the TANF assistance payments to that purpose, and that the department's response was they want another exception to be able to use it on child welfare and foster care payments. So we would urge the committee to really consider the need for TANF to be spent on core TANF funding, because that's the assistance payment that families receive. Thank you.
Thank you. And colleagues, seeing no questions, just want to lean in and thank the agency. I want to thank each and every advocate that came out to speak today in reference to the importance of making sure that we preserve the safety net for our Marylanders, and also wanted to continuously thank Ms. Zimmerman for making sure that she keep us in line, but more importantly, that we're well educated around the agency. Thank you all, and this ends the hearings for Health and Human Services today.